Hi, I'm Justin DeTavio here with Film Don't Lie. Today's edition is going to be on the College Football Playoff National Championship game and the narratives that go along with a game like this. The build-up for the media has to be huge. They're looking to do ticket sales, ad buys, and they need to make sure that viewers are watching the game. So they pick narratives, basically. And what I mean by that is topics that they're going to bring up over and over and over again. While watching the Under Armour All-American game, they mentioned multiple times the All-SEC championship game. You know, they're going to talk about those particular and specific narratives multiple times during the lead-up week, all the talking head shows, podcasts, anything like that, and all of their different quick 30-second or 60-second ads, but also during the game. Kirk Herbstreit or whoever's on the game is going to bring up why not UCF. The fact that Georgia's running a pro-style offense at the Alabama 34 and how similar the two programs are because it's mentor versus protege, Nick Saban versus Kirby Smart, and they're going to mention the fact that mentors and proteges the proteges haven't done very well against the mentor Nick Saban during the history as he's been a head coach, and they're going to bring up the All-SEC championship, the proximity of UGA and Alabama to the national championship game in Atlanta, Georgia. Just a few of the narratives are going to be brought up throughout this game, so hopefully you enjoy this. It's a little bit of taking it a tongue-in-cheek way, just on how many things. Maybe you want to do take a shot every time one of these is brought up during the game, if you want to call an ambulance before the end of the first quarter. Without further ado, here are our top 5 narratives for the College Football Playoff National Championship game on January 8th, 2018. The first narrative we're going to discuss is why not UCF? Why not the Central Florida Knights out of Orlando, Florida, down there, and Spectrum Stadium, it used to be Bright House Network Stadium? Why not? Well, UCF didn't make the cut. They're 12-0 entering into the postseason, if you will, after winning their conference championship game in the American Conference. 12-0, the only undefeated team in all of FBS college football. But the reason why not is multi-tiered, if you will. A very blatant one, is it a terrible strength of schedule? It was ranked in the 50s. The final 4 programs that made it into the college football playoff, Clemson, Alabama, Georgia, and Oklahoma, were number 2, 4, 6, and 7 per teamrankings.com. That's the same strength of schedule I used for UCF, which put them around 54. So strength of schedule, who did you play and who are you competing against, are extremely important. You won 12 games, but who are they against? When you look at some of their biggest opponents for UCF, they did beat Memphis twice. Memphis is number 20 per the S&P Plus rankings from Bill C. USF, South Florida Bulls, their rival, in-state rival, the war on I-4. USF finished 10-2, and they were ranked 15th in the S&P Plus. But your next big high-profile showcase game against Power 5, their only game against Power 5 all season, was Maryland. The Terps finished 114th in the country per the S&P Plus. They would have played Georgia Tech, but that was an off year for Tech as well, as they were in the 60s or so in the S&P Plus. So it didn't help them to not play Houston, a team that's been on the radar since Tom Herman was there, now Major Applewhite, and they finished 36. If you added in the Georgia Tech game and playing Houston instead of one of the cellar dwellers like UConn or even FIU, this might have been a bigger difference for UCF. I still don't believe that they would have gotten into the championship game. And I think it's a twofold process. I think, in a grander scheme. I think, one, I don't think anyone thinks that UCF can beat Bama 9 out of 10 times on a neutral site. And it's a determination the playoff committee claims that they're going with, although they change their ideas on a weekly basis. I think that's one of the things. I don't think people feel like they could do it 9 out of 10 times. They might sneak in and beat an Auburn in the Peach Bowl. And I don't think Auburn took that game off. I think that was full go Auburn, full go UCF. I think UCF was just playing for something that meant a little more. You could see the excitement and the intensity on the faces of Scott Frost, even though he's leaving, still playing like there's no, tomorrow he was playing for a national title. And Mackenzie Milton and Shaquem Griffin, just guys playing lights out. The entire UCF team was playing lights out, and it took a lights out performance for them to upset Auburn in the Peach Bowl. But I don't think that anyone felt like they could beat Bama, who was the 4 seed, that they could beat them 9 out of 10 times on a neutral site. I don't think anyone that they could beat Bama 5 out of 10 times. I think the idea is that Bama would beat them 9 out of 10. UCF may sneak one win in, but Bama, they're a program with determination. They have coaches been there winning national championships. And I think that's a big thing, is the idea that Bama can beat Oklahoma, Georgia, and Clemson. And they obviously proven they can beat Clemson, because they just did, and now they'll have to prove that they can beat Georgia. And, I think the idea was that UCF could not, at least not more than maybe 1 out of 10 tries. Another thing that I think is phasing into this was that UCF had a terrible showing of fan support at the Fiesta Bowl only back in 2014. So 5 years ago, they had a terrible showing at the Fiesta Bowl. And it's just not a big enough market, especially to sell out 2 games. You're going to have to sell out your allotment plus tickets to either the Rose or the Sugar. They would have been playing in the Sugar Bowl against Clemson, and they had to sell that out with the understanding that you might have to sell out your allotment plus extra tickets to Atlanta to fill up a giant NFL stadium. I think when the committee looked and they saw empty seats, they saw that Fiesta Bowl kind of mealy-mouthed showing, they saw the fact that they need to sell ad buys, they need to sell tickets to even casual fans and fans all across the country, and they need to be able to sell eyes to the television to get high ratings during that time, and they felt like Central Florida Knights couldn't do that as much as a traditional power in the Alabama Crimson Tide. So that's why not UCF. The one actual football-based schematic thing that they'll be discussing as a narrative is going to be pro-style offense of UGA against Bama's defense. Even further from that, I think it's more just the cloning. The cloning of Georgia looks a lot like Alabama, and Alabama's used to playing against itself when they practice and they go ones-on-ones or even ones-on-twos. If you're going Bama versus Bama, you're seeing basically the Georgia Bulldogs. So a lot of people are going to be looking at a narrative of, Bama really does shut down pro-style offenses. The spread has been the real Bama killer and the Saban killer over the last few years. If you look back to 2012, Johnny Manziel's big coming out party game, he had 300 some odd, yards. Then you look at Swag Kelly, old Chad Kelly at Ole Miss, putting up 43 points 2 years in a row, finishing 1-1, but putting up 43 points on Alabama's, defense, what they're known for, playing defense. Auburn, 2013 with the kick 6, and then this season again in 2017, Nick Marshall, scoring 3 touchdowns back during the kick 6 season. And looking at Jarrett Stidham, spread to run, Malzahn offense, he had 300 total yards and a touchdown this year. And looking at Clemson, just the way that Clemson was able to put up yardage. I mean, Deshaun Watson almost had 1,000 total yards in 2 games and had 8 touchdowns and only an interception over those 2 games. So, Clemson also was able to beat Bama and only lost by 5 in their other championship game with a younger, less experienced Dabo Swinney and Deshaun Watson. So looking at, what gets to Saban, it's not the pro style. It's not. If you look back and you look at, or teams that just try to play ball control and defense, maybe they're in a spread like Notre Dame was during the BCS championship game that they played in 2013 against Alabama, trying to kind of play ball control, offensive line, run game, defense. It didn't work out for them. They were slaughtered. The LSU rematch back in the 2012 BCS championship game turned out to be a 21-0 Alabama just blanking. Texas without Colt McCoy in the 2010 game, that's a little bit more of a spread, but also looking at trying to get a power run game, trying to play defense under Mac Brown. And then you look at, Florida State earlier in the season, or LSU, Arkansas, Tennessee, USC, Florida under Jim McElwain, Wisconsin, Georgia under Richt. That's pro-style ball control, and trying to play defense and win behind defense, and it really hasn't worked out for people. The spread is what has had success. So you're going to hear a lot about Georgia's pro-style offense, Nick Chubb, Sony Michel, Jake Fromm being a freshman, and him controlling the ball, clock control, play action passing, and Alabama's 34 defense is going to look to smack it in the mouth. It hasn't mattered if it's been Kirby Smart or Jeremy Pruitt. It's Nick Saban's defense. It's going to stop a pro-style offense. That's what they're used to defending, and that's what Nick Saban knows how to defend the best. He's been doing it for years, dating all the way back to his time at Michigan State and LSU, and I can't see a different outcome. I really think that Saban's defense is going to shut down Georgia's pro-style offense. Our third narrative is going to be, this is Saban's 3rd trip in a row, and, is that exciting or is it boring? Where do our minds kind of find our way into that? Well, there's no parity in college football. No one ever said there would be. It's not built like the NFL. There isn't profit sharing. There isn't a draft. This is going to be who signs with whom based on region, location, and facilities, and coach, and history, and tradition. And I think if you look at Alabama, you've got Nick Saban, his championships, 5 championships. He's played for multiple others. And you look at Alabama, Alabama, tons of tradition and history. Bear Bryant, Gene Stallings, and what Nick Saban's done there since he's arrived in 2007, winning 5 championships or something like that, or on his way, I guess, to win 5 championships. And and just looking at his trips there, and does Alabama deserve to be in this without winning conference championship? Alabama has really dominated not only regionally down in the SEC in the Southeast, but also look at who they played in the playoff. Washington from the Pac-12, Clemson from the ACC, and Michigan State from the Big Ten, and they beat them all. And they've done the job. They've beat them all. So region hasn't really mattered. Bama has really been the king of college football and the South. So having that, third consecutive trip, does it make it more boring? In a sense, I mean, I could see people wanting to cheer against Alabama, go for Kirby Smart, his protege, and the underdog, even if they're considered a favorite at all. That won't matter. Nick Saban is, the king of the national championship. I mean, he's the guy. So, king of college football. They're underdogs regardless. But remember, this has happened before. The Florida State Seminoles had their triple threat kind of run from 1998 through 2000. In 1998 losing to, which is 99 Fiesta Bowl, losing to Tennessee, T. Martin, and then in 1999 to 2000 Sugar beating Virginia Tech, then Michael Vick, and then in 2000, which is 2001 Orange Bowl, losing to Josh Heupel, the new UCF Knights head football coach, and the Oklahoma Sooners, giving Bob Stoops his only national championship. So if you look back, the last trio was just 1 and 2. So does it mean Nick Saban's going to win? Absolutely not. Do I think Nick Saban is going to win? Yes, I do, because he's got the experience of being there. He's Nick Saban. He's tough as hell. And they are going to out-talent just about everyone they play, even Georgia, who is extremely talented, because they've got Jalen Hurts, who has the experience of being there and losing and knows that feeling, and kind of has the jitters worn off. And, they have what they've got. Calvin Ridley, they've got, a run game. They've got defense. They have 3 great backs. Nick Saban's only real weakness has been place kickers, not having a strong kicker. So it comes down to a kicking game. Georgia and Rex Beck's definitely going to beat Alabama, but I don't believe that Nick Saban's going to allow it to come down to a kick. So Tyrus Saban winning, beat him. They lose every season just about. I mean, they don't really come out. They lost Auburn this year. They kick 6. Ole Miss, Texas A&M, but when it comes back down time to it, they'll win the SEC, or this year they didn't even have to, and they made it in anyway. We've already braced upon this narrative, but mentor versus protege. The mentor being Nick Saban, his coaching tree being fairly vast against his protege, and Kirby Smart, the Georgia Bulldogs head football coach. Saban's proteges are 0-11 against him, dating to Will Muschamp, who coached with him at LSU and Miami Dolphins, and, he's finished 0-2 while at University of Florida. Jim McElwain, who is, national championship winning offensive coordinator from Nick Saban, then took a head coaching job at Colorado State, where he lost to Alabama, and then while he's at University of Florida, finished 0-2. So McElwain is 0-3 in his time against Nick Saban. Derek Dooley went on to become the head football coach of the Tennessee Volunteers, a short-lived kind of era there, and he finished 0-3 against Nick Saban. Mark D'Antonio, who worked with Nick Saban back at Michigan State, is 0-2 against Nick Saban, his former mentor. So you're looking around now at Kirby Smart getting his shot at the opportunity. The thing about that is, I'm talking about pro-style offense already, is think about this. They're all kind of microcosms. They're all clones, if you will, of what Nick Saban was doing in Alabama. Will Muschamp, defense first, run-oriented football. Try to have a quarterback who's just good enough. Jim McElwain, defense first, run-oriented football. Try to have a quarterback doing just good enough. Dooley was just a mess all in general. And then Mark D'Antonio, tight ends, fullbacks, pro-style offense, quarterback who does just good enough. Strong power run game and defense. D'Antonio's known for his defense at Michigan State. So you're looking at Will Muschamp known for defense. McElwain, even though he's an offensive coach, had better defenses at Florida than he ever had offenses. Dooley was putting out better defenses, and D'Antonio's always put out better defensive offenses at Michigan State. But they're all clones that are a little bit worse. It's kind of like the Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt joke about Eli Manning clones, where, we just keep cloning Eli Mannings, and they just come out worse and worse. Instead of Toyota yells out Toyoga. We're at that point here where we're getting into lesser and lesser versions for a while there, going in with Dooley and even McElwain. But maybe this is the one where we get a really good clone Eli Manning. Maybe we get a good Bama clone, Saban clone out of Kirby Smart. He's proven in year 2. He's already got them in the College Football Playoff National Championship. And he may be an underdog in the sense that he hasn't coached in a game of this caliber yet as a head coach, but he has the experience of being at Bama, as the defensive coordinator. I think he knows a lot of the pressures that are there, but he hasn't felt them himself. And Jake Fromm being a true freshman, he may be in the Jalen Hurts situation where it might not make total sense to him until he gets in the moment. So I'm willing and able and excited to watch the game, unlike other people, and see this mentor versus protege narrative and see where it goes. And here it is, our final narrative, the All-SEC title game. If you're watching anything on ESPN this week, you're hearing all about it. Paul Feinbaum has to be loving this every second. I don't really watch his show, but I follow him on social media. I love his heel work that he does, very WWE, WWF style heel work. I'm a Bobby the Brain Heenan almost, if you will, if you're a wrestling fan out there. The SEC title game. That's basically what it is. It's a, de facto SEC championship. It may not be the most fun or the most dynamic. I mean, I appreciate the regional aspect to it when you've got an Oregon versus Ohio State or a Miami versus Ohio State, or some of these championships that we've had in the past are a little bit more regional and dynamic. Florida State and Oklahoma. I've enjoyed that, but for lack of a better phrase, it is what it is. I mean, the best teams are playing for the national championship. Georgia is second in the S&P Plus. Alabama is third. The top-rated team in the S&P Plus is Ohio State, but they had a bad loss to the Iowa Hawkeyes, and that knocked them out of the game. If they didn't choke against Iowa, Ohio State would have been the number 4 seed for winning the Big Ten. Alabama would have been left out. Nick Saban wouldn't even be in this thing. It wouldn't be an all-SEC possibility. So much would have changed, but Ohio State choked against Iowa, was blown out. It wasn't a 1-point loss. It was a 30-some-odd point loss. And we're looking at Georgia and Alabama. I personally would love a Final 6. You get maybe your Power 5, but the exception being if one of them is out of the top 10, or, the Power 5 conference winners are not allowed in. And then an at-large, which could create 2 or 3 at-larges, maybe just 2. And maybe UCF could have been in. However, they probably wouldn't have, because the College Football Playoff Committee didn't even put them into the top 10. And, maybe with that 50-some-odd strength of schedule, they didn't deserve to be there. And neither did Wisconsin. So who else are you going to put in? I'm not sure. I think maybe 6 might make sense, but I think for now they're really proving that 4 is, appropriate, it's acceptable. With an all-SEC game, this might not be that much fun. I mean, you had the 9-6 Bama LSU one a few years ago, which turned a 21-0 Bama beatdown of LSU, and that was Les Miles' boring offense. They're going boring offenses against stellar defenses and lots of talent. But this isn't a rematch. Bama and Georgia haven't played in a couple of years. Since Kirby Smart got to Athens, Georgia, they haven't played. So it's the first time we see this game in a couple of years. You have the mentor-protege narrative involved. And it's kind of cool. It's 70 miles from Athens to Atlanta, where the championship is being played, 200 miles from Tuscaloosa, 146 from Birmingham, where the SEC offices are. So kind of a cool dynamic there. Home teams haven't, or relative home teams haven't exactly played that well. Oklahoma, back in the 2000 Orange Bowl, they beat Florida State. It was much closer to Miami than Oklahoma obviously is. Miami lost to Nebraska, 95 Orange Bowl game. So home teams have lost, or at least close proximity teams. USC lost the Rose Bowl to Texas, back with Vince Young. So it's not like the team that's closest is going to necessarily win the game. All right, so will it force a playoff expansion? I don't think so. I think the 4 best teams made it, and the 2 best survived. Clemson, buried Ohio State a couple of years back, and I think that kind of knocked the iffy teams out. Wisconsin lost to Ohio State. That knocked them off the block. They beat Miami. So what? And UCF is a strength of schedule. Let's not get back into UCF. Wisconsin's strength of schedule is pretty poor. The one and a half big time teams they played in Ohio State and Miami. They lost to one and edged Miami by 10. And Miami just turned the ball over like crazy. So if you really look at it, I don't think this is going to cause a playoff expansion.